Well, the year of 1983 was a particularly busy one. I spent Monday to Friday in Adelaide and had my own apartment there as we reorganised and started to bed down the big Elders group. It was very exciting, and there were a lot of lazy assets in that company and we had to strip them out. I reorganised the whole business into various divisions and we put our own people in charge, because other than in the pastoral business where we left the existing management there. And we worked exceptionally hard in that year. And then of course towards the end of the year, in early December, Ken Jarrett and I were overseas talking to banks. We flew from New York and over to San Francisco where he and I were going to stay with my great friend Bill Spencer, who I worked with at McKinsey, who had a lovely home on the north side of San Francisco at a place called Ross. And when we got there, my secretary Barbara Beckett had left messages that Ron Briley had informed the brewery and had a press conference on Friday night that he was going to bid for 20-odd% of CUB. And in fact he may go higher and may make an offer. Well, of course what this meant was, because CUB owned 49% of Elders, he was going to get control of both. And in his press conference he said he'd sell Elders off. So we jumped on the next plane. We couldn't get on a plane till Friday night. It was Thursday night in San Francisco. And we beavered away all the way home. Scanlon, Cowper were there working away. We got Sir Ian in, who was our chairman, and we had to plot what we were going to do. It was quite clear what we had to do was buy Brearley out, if we could, and make a takeover for CUB. We organised a board meeting for Sunday morning and in the meantime I got a QC to write an opinion, and this opinion was very, very important in the context of what happened, because what he wrote was that if you sit on any board of a company, you can only vote in the interests of that company. And essentially the CUB board, the CUB members of the Elders board were about half. So the result was that we had a real problem, and we had to impress on them at the board meeting, which Sir Ian McLennan did in no uncertain terms. So John Bailey, who was the senior man on the Elders board representing the brewery, he said, look, we'd like to go and have a private meeting. So they went and had a separate meeting. They first of all wanted to form a holding company that would hold Elders and CUB, which was just a nonsense, because you would have a lot of capital tied up unproductively. While they were out of the room, we all resolved that we want to vote to take over CUB. It was our only solution. But of course it was about $1 billion bid. Jarrett was working hard with all the banks. We came back on the Sunday, came back into the meeting, the CUB people, and John Bailey, who became a great ally of mine, he basically said the CUB directors are not going to vote. They didn't vote at all, and we, the rest of us, resolved unanimously to buy CUB. John Bailey came up to me after the meeting and he said, John, you've got till Tuesday lunchtime to get control of CUB, otherwise there will be a meeting. I can delay it till then. He didn't like Eddie Cohen nearly as much as Sir Ian didn't like him. He said, you really got to have your thing worked out. So we went to work all night. All night we were working with the banks. We had them all in our office, they're Australian representatives, and I was talking to the chief executives of the Deutsche Bank. Fortunately, Willie Purvis, who ran the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, he was in Australia, so we got him into the office and he said he'd lead the consortium. And we had to raise 970 million, which we did by Monday morning. All night we had an agreed document to have 970 million. We called a meeting for 9 o'clock because we couldn't really proceed to buy CUB shares unless we had the funds in place. We called the board back, told them we'd got the funds, the agreement was in place, And then all of a sudden we learned that the currency had been stopped. There was no trading in the Australian dollar pending an announcement that afternoon. Paul Keating was the treasurer, and there were two options. He was either going to free the dollar, or he was going to make it much more expensive to bring overseas funds into Australia. The second one would have absolutely cruelled our pitch no end. Anyway, Jerry Niles said, we can't do anything until we find out what the Treasurer's going to do. I said, I've already rung the Treasurer, I told a white lie, and he's going to free the dollar this afternoon. Well, he said, that's fine. So we then agreed to proceed. We hit the market running at 10 o'clock. By the end of the day, we had talked to Ron Briley, I had, Peter Scanlon had. He was thinking overnight, and he sold his shares early the next morning. By this stage, he was buying at 3.35. Our bid was up, we started buying up to 3.82. We cleaned them out, and by the end of trading, by lunchtime on Tuesday, we had 51% of CUB. So that they could not buy any shares in us, and as a result they were now a subsidiary. It was one of them, I think probably my most audacious, or our most audacious bid, and we did it all in literally 48 hours. Tuesday afternoon I went home, and it was the first time I'd had any sleep for 3 days. But what a 3 days they were, and what a fantastic asset we purchased.